You're watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and welcome to another anime review. Today we'll be jumping back into JoJo's Bizarre Adventure to talk about Part 3, Stardust Crusaders. Now, Stardust Crusaders is a fan favorite, and it's probably the most popular and well-known of the JoJo parts. For many reasons. It was the first to introduce stands, plus Jotaro is the main character, and he is widely considered to be the best JoJo. I definitely can see why. I honestly don't know who my favorite JoJo is at this point. Probably young Joseph. But maybe I'll get to that in a retrospective once I'm caught up on the series, because obviously I still have to see Golden Wind. At the time I'm recording this, I'm actually about halfway through Diamond is Unbreakable. I've been kind of binging the shit out of this show, so I've seen quite a bit of it already. Also, as with always with these JoJo reviews, there will be spoilers ahead, but I will try to warn you in advance. At the beginning of this arc, I will mention there will be some spoilers for the previous two arcs. You can just expect that at the beginning of each of these, but I will still try to warn you in advance. So, Stardust Crusaders takes place in the 1980s. I think it specifically takes place in 1987. Obviously, it's set 107 years after the end of Part 1, Phantom Blood. And it is actually more of a direct sequel to Phantom Blood than Battle Tendency was. But it does have elements from both that it incorporates into it. For instance, spoiler for Battle Tendency, but obviously Joseph is an old man in this. The reason that's a spoiler is because they actually fake his death at the end of Battle Tendency, and I don't mean they fake it as in the context of the universe. I mean the creator tried to make you think he was dead when he wasn't. But then he comes back at the end of the final episode of Battle Tendency. That said, Old Man Joseph is in this, and his English is great. I love it. It's one of my favorite things about him in it. His constant catchphrases of, "Oh my god," and, "Oh no," and "Holy shit, son of a bitch," stuff like that. They're great. This, like I said, was the first one to introduce stands, but anyway, the main plot is that Dio has returned from Part 1, and because of his return, it has caused something called stands to start appearing in people. I'm still not exactly clear on how stands work and how they're all tied back to Dio, because again, I'm only about halfway through Part 4, which is the one that follows up after this, obviously. But the JoJo we have in this part is Jotaro Kujo. He is 17 years old, so younger than both Joseph and Jonathan, although older than Josuke is in Part 4. I don't know about Giorno yet, because I haven't even started Part 5 yet. Anyway, Jotaro Kujo is built like a fucking tank. Like, for a 17-year-old, he is gigantic. I mean, he's not as big as, like, Jonathan or Joseph. I think progressively with each arc, the main character actually gets less and less muscular, but Jotaro is still fucking huge. And Jotaro has his stand awaken, originally thinking it's an evil spirit, but his stand is called Star Platinum, and it's by far my favorite stand so far. He has this catchphrase he does when he punches, Star Platinum does, where he goes, "Ora, ora, 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 ora." But if you don't know what a stand is, I mean, I don't really know for sure exactly what a stand is, but basically it's kind of like a fighting spirit or like a battle avatar that each has their own special unique abilities that you use to fight your opponents. Some of them can talk, some of them can't. Some of them seem sentient, other ones seem to only mirror stuff that their stand user does. So I'm a little unclear on exactly how they work, but yeah. Originally I did say I think Hammond is cooler than stands, and I still do think that. However, I think that stands are also definitely really cool, especially Star Platinum. Like I said, I really like Star Platinum. And Jotaro is different than both Jonathan and Joseph in that he's kind of a punk. He's a thug. He's just like kind of that delinquent you see in school, or at least that's kind of the appearance he gives off and the kind of vibe that you get from him. But he's actually really cool-headed and level-headed. The only drawback is he's really mean to his mom, constantly calling her a stupid bitch and telling her to shut up, which he just responds with okay, which I was like, okay then. He also really doesn't like girls who are really obnoxious, and girls fucking love him. Jotaro is a thought destroyer. Girls come at him and they're like, "Oh, Jotaro, we love you," and he's like, "Get the fuck away from me." And I fucking love him for that. Jotaro is such a cool character. I can definitely see why he's a fan favorite. There's also some stuff where Joseph, he hates Japan, and he hates the Japanese because his daughter married a Japanese man and took her away from him. The whole thing that starts off with Stardust Crusaders is after Dio's, like, the stands are awakening, Jotaro's mom, Holly, actually has a stand start appearing on her. But she's not strong enough to withstand it, so it's killing her. And so they figure they have about 50 days to go and kill Dio before this stand will kill Holly. And so they set off on a journey. And, that's how Stardust Crusaders begins. Along the way, they fight many other stand users, eventually working their way up to Dio. They do travel the world. going to many different places along the way to make it to Dio, who is hidden out in Egypt. Stardust Crusaders is the longest, at least as far as the anime goes. I don't know about the manga, but anime-wise, Stardust Crusaders has the most amount of episodes so far. It has 48, whereas parts 4 and 5 each have 39. Part 1 only has 9, and Part 2 has like 26 or 24, somewhere around there. I can't remember exactly. Stardust Crusaders, like I said, it has Dio return, which I really like because Dio was a great villain, and I really liked him in Part 1, so having him come back in Part 3 was fantastic. Obviously, spoilers for Part 1, obviously, but Dio coming back does mean that he did actually take Jonathan's body, and is using it, and that will actually factor into Part 5, although I haven't got there yet. I have had some stuff spoiled for me. I won't get into that here, but Dio's influence can be felt pretty much throughout the first 6 parts, because the first 6 parts are the original timeline. Starting with Part 7, we're on the second timeline that's completely separate. But anyway, so Jotaro and the Stardust Crusaders, as they become known, go to fight Dio. Along the way, they do have some people that were kind of like forced to join Dio with these things called flesh buds. Spoilers ahead for some of the earlier episodes, but there's a character named Kakuin who has this stand called Hierophant Green. He was the first one that Jotaro encounters, and he had a flesh bud in his head, and he does join up with the Stardust Crusaders, as does this guy named Polnareff, who also had a flesh bud in his head and has a stand called Silver Chariot. Anyway, as they go on, they meet up with more people, and they fight stand users, and they work their way up to Dio. A big battle breaks out with Dio, who uses this stand called the World, which, again, spoilers ahead, is able to stop time. Jotaro eventually defeats him because Jotaro is able to move throughout time while it's stopped. He's the only one who can do that other than Dio. Because Jotaro's stand, Star Platinum, is actually a very similar stand to the World, plus Jotaro's will. The combination of the two kind of made it so he's able to control time to an extent like Dio is. Jotaro actually begins to be able to use the ability of the World. He never uses the stand, the World itself, but when he uses it, he goes, Star Platinum, Warudo. So he uses like a combination of the two. So Star Platinum, the World. Part 3, fucking great. I absolutely loved every second of it. Part 3, Stardust Crusaders, is the most adventure part of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Because they're traveling the world, and it definitely feels like more of an adventure than the previous 2 parts, or the following part after it did. But we'll get to that more in Part 4 when I review it. But overall, I highly recommend Stardust Crusaders. It definitely earns its reputation as being really good and being one of the best arcs of JoJo. Still can't say whether or not it's the best. It's definitely great. But my thing is every JoJo arc I've seen has been good for its own reasons. And they each have kind of their own tone and, like, atmosphere that makes them each unique to each other. So, anyway, that's my thoughts on JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 3, Stardust Crusaders. I may not have gone as in-depth of the plot as I did with the others, but it is a much longer arc, being 48 episodes, and frankly, I just recommend you watch it yourself. But anyway, this has been Fugitive Red Eye, and you have a great day.